Hello everyone. I've been asked by one of the subscribers to my channel to give a quick overview of how this kind of funhouse scene was built. Um, I made this kind of as a side project to get a little bit of practice with, especially for these streams that I've been doing. To kind of use that, the character and the interactions in something that's kind of fun, and at least what I think it is, um, in a gamey kind of idea. So the question was, how did you build this? Kind of a breakdown of this scene. So let's get to it. I'm just going to show you. Kind of the breakdown within Blender, for each one of these assets, at least the ones that I made, because there's some assets that I purchased, so I'm going to show you where I got those. And some of the textures that I've used, they're just to mention, they're all free textures. So especially for the drywall and the plywood, they're just I have a free, everybody can get a free account on textures.com and get these, even though they're at 10K, I mean, not 10K, but 1K resolution, they still look pretty decent. Okay, so let's start this off. So I'm thinking I'm just going to rebuild the scene, just kind of to bring in each one of the elements at a time, and then go over and show you what it took to build it. Okay, so right now I think I have my time of day is a little messed up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use just like I did here, use this wall as a kind of a to cast shadows. So let's bring that over here, and I'll be using this as right now the time of day is at night, but I haven't really set it up too well, so it's as bright as this. Actually, let me tweak that real quick, because it should be pretty simple to get something here, and it seems like the sky is still too bright, so I'm trying to find, there we go. I just went through a couple of my time of day settings to try and find something that's kind of a little bit more night-like. Okay, so let's pull some of this stuff in. I think I named one of this as a boarded up area, which is like the main walls of this this setup. So we're here. Let's go ahead and I'll drag a light in. So let's go to components, and I'll bring a point light, and there we have it right there. Okay, so now that we have something lighting up the environment, let's go over and I'll quickly show you what I did to create these walls. So I have these already opened up. So first of all, let's go to wireframe, and hopefully, even if you're not using Blender, I'm hoping that it's just going to give you an idea of the breakdown of this. So what I did for this is actually start off with just some walls with the insulation kind of in between. So if you look at this, they're actually pretty simple. You get the studs that are just extruded cube, and then resized to fit the size of, I think these are like the American standard, which is like a 2x4, so 2 inches by 4 inches, which is 5 centimeters by 10 centimeters about, maybe a little less than that. So once you have the studs, what I did is I've created this because I wanted to give it a little bit of waviness. So if you look at the way let me bring this the value of the light down a little bit. It's a little too strong. So if you look at the way the insulation is, it kind of like kind of goes in and out. and from what I've seen as far as the installation, that's kind of how it is. You know, it's not like just a straight type thing. Um, okay, so let me go back to this. So what I did is I've created a plane and I've subdivided it a bunch of times. Make sure whenever you subdivide to have it as equal squares, because if you have rectangles, then what I did is I applied in Blender there's a modifier called displacement, and I've played around with the options for that, and so actually let me show you. This is going to be real simple. So let me add I'm going to add a plane, and in here I'm going to quickly subdivide this maybe by, let's do 100, I would say. I think that should be fine. Okay, so you can add a displacement, and to this I'm just going to call a new texture, and I'm going to use, I think I use clouds. So that's a little strong. Let's do it flat. So once you go back in here, you can set this to maybe 0.1, and you can go back to your clouds, and I think you can do the size. So that kind of gives it that you know, that wave look that I had before. So once I got that in, this is, you know, I'm not saying that you need to do this, but this is how I did it. So once I applied that, what you'll have is it's going to be quite, I mean, it's going to be pretty high poly, and we don't really need that. So I've gone ahead and applied a decimate modifier. And then I've started reducing this to the point that it's actually still a rectangle, but it still keeps some of that waviness in it. So once I apply that, you'll notice that the face number got decreased dramatically. And at this point, you could just go ahead and unwrap it and use whatever texture you can find on the internet. As far as you know, if you search for insulation, you might be able. That's how I did it. But also, what I did is hey Oscar, welcome. So also, what I did is remove some of the branding. I think this had kind of a label, something named differently. So you know, maybe just to guard yourself, you know, do that. So the same thing goes for the bottom installation piece, and this one I got off of textures.com. The installation planes, I've used the same method as the ones for the wall. I've just applied a different texture, and of course with a different normal, so you know they look different. But as far as the studs, you know, these 2x4s, they're all the same. And last but not least, there's also the outer plane, outer wall, and I believe this was again just textures.com. You can find some kind of free texture. You know, looking at it right now, I'm thinking it might be a little bit too. I mean, I can probably tile it a little more, but I'll leave it like that. And the same goes for the top. The top is also from textures.com. It's also a free texture that I downloaded. It's actually, I think it's a scan. So, so as far as the breakdown for that, for the walls, I would say that's pretty much it. You can go at this, I would say, a couple of ways. The way I did it was to create, let's see, what layer was that on? Okay, it's right here. So what I did for this is create the entire thing in Blender and then export kind of this whole structure. What you could do is, for example, you can just export one of these sections. So for example, let's see, hopefully you can tell what's going on. So maybe you can export just this one section and then, you know, put the pieces together yourself inside of the engine. That's totally fine. You know, I chose to go this way because it was easier for me to build the whole structure in Blender and then export it. So with that said, that is pretty much it. It's like I said, it's a very simple type structure. So now moving on, the other thing that I had on this is the plywood and the drywall. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. So plywood. Alright, so there's one of them. Okay, and you'll be able to tell that this is, if the walls were simple, this is even more simple, so to speak. The thing about this is everything is in the unwrap. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to close this real quick. So let's see, where do I have the plywood? Here we go. First of all, this is again just a texture from textures.com, and I believe, let me see if I can find that so I can show it to you real quick, because it's actually a pretty interesting, I think it's a pretty good texture for this. It gives you some variety in it, and so plywood. Let's see if I can find that for you real quick. Alright, so here we go. There's quite a few options on textures.com as far as plywood goes, and mine was something like this, but it wasn't that, I don't think. Oh, there we go. So it was this one, and so see, even for this, you get quite a few options. So, and you can go up to, you know, probably not going to be able to use this in a game engine, but it's still a pretty decent size. I had to do a little bit of work in Photoshop afterwards to make this tile. So if you look at it here, and then in Engine, so let's take a look at it in Engine real quick. So first of all, let me decrease the specular for the light. Okay, so once you're in Engine, you can look at it like this. And also what I did is I've created another material which will be like that. So you know, you can get quite a bit of variety out of just one texture just by, and that is the only thing I did. So of course this applies to any other engines. I've just offsetted it by, for me it worked with 0.32 and 0.53, at least the way I've set up my texture. But hopefully that makes sense, and if you have a little bit of knowledge of Photoshop like I do, I'm quite a beginner with it, you can do, you know, some cloning and some patch fixing, and you can get this texture to tile. So with that said, that's our panel. So let's go ahead and place this on the floor, right? Just to kind of work on, you know, building this scene out. So say we have it in place right there. We're going to make it a little bigger to kind of cover the bottom. You know, I'm thinking maybe you can leave some of these spaces open, so you know, you can go like that with it, and you know, maybe you can rotate it around kind of like so, and have that section open like that. It's entirely up to you. But what I was saying is, let's apply the other material to this one. So just to give a little bit of variety. So just like that. So you know, from this one onto that one, they look a little different, you know, and you kind of come together like that. So so that is for the textures. But let's go and I wanted to show you real quick something about the mesh itself. So the mesh, if you look at it, it does have a bevel. But if you look at it in Engine, you're not going to notice that hard angle. So if you look at it from from here, you notice that there's like this one is making some use of some custom normals. What that does is, and I actually have a video, so I'm not going to go into that. There's a video in my playlist that has that shows how to make these custom normals. But if you look at it, you'll notice that there's this soft transition and between on this bevel. If you do use Cryengine, and use CryBlend or bcry, I was never able to get it to export the custom normals for some of this. So I've just went the way of the FBX export. Um, so that should be pretty simple. If you use Blender, you can go to File, Export, FBX, and just make sure you use the selected objects. And I didn't change anything of the other settings because you don't really need to. Um, so again, I'm showing you the drywall here actually, so let's take a look at the plywood. Hopefully I have that open here. Okay, so plywood is identical. It's actually the exact same file. I've just changed the texture. So if we look at the unwrap, you'll notice that everything, since this is a smooth corner or edge, so to speak, you'll notice that I'm just following this along. So I'm starting off with unwrapping this face and then moving on to this one and then continuing on. The back is going to be just like that. So the only thing that's separated is here, and I think I can join these together. It might make it look a little cleaner, but again, this is something that you're not going to be able to notice in game. Now, as far as the plywood, I mean, this is the plywood. So as far as the drywall, this is the exact same process. Like I said, the meshes are identical. It's just the texture that is different. So speaking of drywall, let's actually get the drywall into our scene. So let's take a look and see if we can find some drywall. And there we go. So for this one, I've actually done two of these. So, or not necessarily two, but two types of drywall. And again, textures.com came in handy for this. So let's actually first of all let me throw a couple of these pieces on, and then we'll cover some of these areas up. So there we have one of them right there. Thinking we can probably put a little more with it. Then move it on to this side. And maybe offset a little bit. So, and then the second piece is this one. This one is a little bit more rectangular. So, you don't have, and it also, it's a different texture. So it breaks up the, like if you look at these, man, this light is a little too strong still. So let me, there we go, make it a little, whoops, make it a little yellow and decrease the strength of it. And I'll probably need an Environment Pro for this one. But for now, I'll just kind of try and put it out of the way like so. Alright. There we go. That's a little better. Probably a little too low, but at least you get an idea of how these are, kind of different. So, if you think of the environment itself, maybe like in a fun house, you're not going to have all this perfect kind of drywall like you would have in a normal house. It'd be just kind of things slapped together, trying to like, freak out the kids or the visitors. So let's take a look at the textures for these. And again, let me bring you up. Let's see, where is it? Textures.com. I think I have it here somewhere. Alright, so if we look for drywall, this was something that I've had to work with in searching because I'm used to this being called sheetrock, or at least in my mind. So there wasn't anything that I could find for that. And just looking up drywall, it actually brings up quite a few results. And this was one of them. And the other one was, I believe it was under here. So this one also has the decal. So if you want to create the decal, you can go off of that. But this is the one that I used, and along with this one. So as you can notice, this one has a little bit of an issue. It's not tileable by any means, but once you do a little bit of cropping in Photoshop, you can make it work. You could definitely make it work. All right, so we have the drywall in place, and like I said, these are very simple. Um, so let's see, can we make it so that we have a little bit another piece down here? Maybe make this a little smaller and move it up. Kind of put it sideways like that. And then maybe this one we're going to throw and put it past one of these studs, so just to have that opened up and kind of show some of the stuff underneath, um, just like that. Try to make sure that you have them a little bit overlapping the studs, so uh, just like that. Okay, so the walls are pretty much in place. Now let's go into some of the individual items that were in the scene. One thing that I did have was some pipes. So I always like adding pipes to the scene because it's just kind of adding a little bit of detail. So let's take a look at, do have some pipes around here, so I think that might do just fine here. Alright, so this pipe, as you notice, it's pretty simple kind of geometry, so let's go over that real quick. What I did, I've tried to make these as modular as possible. So I'm not a plumber by any means, but what I've noticed is that a lot of them, you need to have some kind of elbow going on, a straight piece, for repeating, kind of a repeating pattern type situation. Um, and some joints like this one over here, and of course kind of a mounting aspect. Hey Lord, yeah, I've been streaming. Today is just a kind of a breakdown of a scene that I'm doing for a side project. The progress is going good with my main project. I've been doing interactions, and but I mean a little bit of a better setup interactions that I've been the more I'm learning. So hopefully I'll be able to do kind of a progress showcase at some point later on. But so back to this. So these are the pipes, and for this one, I would recommend, like what I did is I've actually created a high poly and a low poly to do baking and create some like wear effects in Substance Painter. Like maybe something around the edges here. Some of these broken down paint. That's entirely up to you. I'm kind of starting to gravitate more towards not necessarily doing this for certain assets, just because you're gonna eat up your texture memory pretty quick. So, for say kind of this pipe asset, what I would do, and probably I'm gonna end up doing at some point, is um, just have a plain metal texture, and then in your engine you can apply a detail map to add those damages. Because right now you can put a lot more polygons into things, so you can, like I've mentioned before, you can do one of those custom normals for the edges, so you don't get that hard edge, that hard corner in some of these little areas. But that's just being a little nitpicking and probably too much. Okay, so we have the pipe, and you can add multiple of these. So why not? Let's do maybe another one here. Maybe like there's a drainage pipe or something. Let's see, 180, almost there, 180. All right, so we have that. You can probably do maybe one on the ceiling. Let's do so kind of like that, I guess. Let's see, if we put it on the ceiling, let's do it like this, right? Maybe that will be like a pipe or something. Um, so we have that. So that covers the pipes. Let's take a look at one of the things that I really wanted to have in this funhouse, and that I've seen in other funhouses are mirrors, right? So Cryengine is not particularly good with reflections, but you can fake them decently. So let's take a look, and let me bring in um, one of the mirrors that I have here. So give me just 1 second. All right. So this is a good example of a trim sheet. So first of all, let me apply the correct material to this, or at least what might be a little bit more of a um, mirror type surface. So since we start to get into more reflective stuff in our scene, let's add a environment probe. So let's go and bring in the environment probe here, and that's good. Just going to move the properties here so you can see what I have. And let's do a sort priority of 30 so it's above everything else around it. And we'll do the size, again, 30, 30, 30. And I'm going to set the resolution to 512 and generate. Alright, so hopefully this is going to help a little bit with the reflections in the scene. There we go. So that's much better. And as you can tell, there is you do get some reflections on this. They're not perfect by any means, but depending on how you set it up, I think you can get something going pretty well. But one of the things that I wanted to highlight is the way this is set up. So I'm going to go over this quickly over this trim sheet that I've done because I use the same trim sheet for this as well as say for example if I want to create let's bring in a painting. So I have one of these paintings here. Whoops. Not that it really makes sense to have paintings in a funhouse, but you never know. So let's try and place it right there. Alright, so these two paintings, they're actually the geometry is again very simple. So let's go into that. So here we have it, and this is our in this case it's the mirror, and but it has two materials. So one of them is going to be the outer edge, which is kind of the rim of the painting, and then the painting itself, which is this flat plane, and there you go, you see the unwrapping here. But the frame itself, you can see that I have a trim sheet right here. So the way that one's built is, if you look at it right here, let's see, maybe I don't have it in this file, but I believe I have it open somewhere else here. There we go. So these are all the turn on screencast displays. So I've created a few trim sheets, especially for decoration purposes. In this case, these paintings, mirrors, maybe kind of a trim in the house. There's plenty of options. The original piece for this, I believe it's you can find it on Blend Swap, where you'd find all these trim pieces, the high poly already done. So what I did is I've created the meshes. So if you look at it from the side, hopefully you'll be able to tell a little better. So let's go ahead and hide some of these high polys. So I'm just going to move them to the second layer. So what I did, I've created a bunch of these low poly trims that I can bake the details from these high poly meshes. So that way I can get some details like this, or like this. And if we look at the wireframe for that, you'll notice that hopefully, let me try and hide this. So you'll notice that the wireframe is just as simple as it was in Blender, right? So that's pretty much all you need to do to get some of these trim pieces going, and then just have a single texture that you can have a variety of. In my case, I believe I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So seven different trims for your various situations. Maybe one of them is going to be for, say, a railing on your staircase, right? Or again, a trim for a mirror, and well, various decorations that you can use. So hopefully that makes sense on creating these trim sheets. Once I've done that, the baking and texturing was done in Substance Painter. There's plenty of videos on how to do something like that. Alright, so let's go ahead and unhide our mesh here and try and place this mirror in kind of a fun house position. And from what I've been able to tell from some references, a lot of them like to place them like this, kind of facing down, just to give you that I don't know, like you look at it and you're a little freaked out. Overall, it's a pretty decent reflection. I mean, it's not perfect, but it works out. Okay, so we have a mirror there. Let's maybe add another one down here on the bottom. Kind of just pointing up a little bit. And let's make it a little smaller. There we go. Kind of like that. And I mean, actually, reflections are not that bad. All right. So as far as the texture for the reflection, let me show you real quick, at least how it is in Cryengine. So what I'm using is Cryengine has this game SDK that you get quite a bit of variety of textures. I mean, it's they're getting up in the age. So most of them you're gonna see they're like 512 or 1K, but they're pretty useful for things. So first of all, as far as the mirror goes, I need a diffuse and then I need a bump map. The bump map is the part that's just showing up these cracks, right? So for that, I've actually found some cracked glass texture on textures.com, and I've selected the cracks. So if you look at the glossiness for this, you'll notice that the texture itself, it's pretty dark. So I was able to easily select the cracks and then use that to kind of dim the reflection on it a little bit. So if we want to make it a little bit more reflective, we can bring the specular color up and or down. So you'll notice that gets a little bit more intense. So that is pretty much the setup for the mirrors. So now let's get into some of the rest of this. For this scene, I've also added, I also made some spider webs, and I've been noticing that there's not anything out there that shows you how to make spider webs, as well as there's not a lot of textures for this. So let's bring this in real quick and bring it up. So there's the spider webs right there, and kind of I've tried to place them somewhere kind of just hanging off the ceiling, right? So probably right there. I'm guessing that should be pretty okay, I'm thinking. So let's make these a little small and a little big. So let's go over how these were made. And spider webs. All right. So first of all, what I ended up doing is actually try and search for the spider webs. And the best place that I was able to find this is on Gleb Alexandrov's site. He's kind of a Blender guru, and he does have a tutorial on making spiderweb in Blender. So this is part of I follow this as well, but there's also a spiderweb's texture, and this is a pretty nice texture. I think it's actually almost 4K. So you do get some really nice spider webs in here, which is really good. So in order for me to do what I have is what I've done. So let's look um, at wireframe real quick. So if you take a look at these, they're again just very simple geometry. I have a flat plane and then one that's subdivided, and it's kind of rotated around a little bit, so it just gives that, if you look at the actual item in the engine, it gives that, let's see, maybe, can we tell? Let me try and see if I can pull that texture and make it so that it's not transparent. So if you look at it, you'll see that it's kind of giving you this curve a little bit in it. So just use your imagination on this. So that's what I did. Also, make sure that you get if you look at the texture itself, make sure that you get the very important thing about this is going to be your alpha. So if you notice, my alpha is being the one on, sorry, I need to be over this. So it's the one on the right. The one on the left is the diffuse, and the one on the right is the alpha. So you want to make sure that that's a little dimmer than usual. The other thing that helped it a lot for me was that I used a little bit of emissive intensity. So for example, if I'm turning this back to 0, you'll notice that you can barely see it, especially with my alpha being so big. But if I turn the alpha down, you'll notice that you get these kind of, these overall it's not perfect, right? So what it ended up doing is actually give us really small, low intensity emissive color, or low value emissive color, along with a low intensity emissive. So setting that to 0.5, you'll notice that you already get a little bit more detail in there. And bringing up your alpha test, well, not all the way, and I kind of hate this. It's kind of, I don't know if it's an issue with everything that's transparent or has an alpha, but if I bring it all the way up, it kind of disappears. So let me unselect this and play around with some of these alpha test values. So you'll notice that having that emissive in here really helps with, you don't want to go too high with it, so because it's not going to be a light source, but having a low value I think helps quite a bit, along with a low emissive color, because again, if you change this up and bring it up to this, you don't want that. Okay, so there's our spider web. Ooh, that's already starting to look like a little bit of a fun house. I'm actually starting to like this scene a little better than my previous one. Okay, so now let's dress up this scene a little bit. So a couple of the things that I've used were some decals, and those always help. So let's take a look and see if we have something on the miscellaneous, and we have a decal, and we want to place this on one of these walls, or maybe we're going to do it on both. So one of them is going to go here, and let's make it a little smaller. So for this one, I've gotten again some decals off of textures.com, and the one thing that I like is actually arrows. So kind of just pointing you towards um, you know, where to go in the house, right? Because there's a line, and you gotta move on through things. So there's another arrow here. Maybe you can point it slightly down a little bit. But again, this is all up to you as far as what decals you're going to use. Again, one of the things that I like to do is also use a little bit of oops. Sometimes you got to be facing it, because otherwise the little gizmo is going to freak out a little bit. So let's duplicate this and also add a little bit of maybe a little bit of leaking, kind of a leaking decal. So also these are from textures.com. Maybe something like this. Whoa, spinning a little too fast. So that's kind of annoying because I have it in 5-degree increments. So I'm just going to change this to maybe 45. That way I don't have to deal with it as much. So let's make this decal a little bigger and just have it kind of come off the ceiling like that, and kind of getting everything dirty there. Alright, so those are all the assets that I made. Now for some of the assets that I bought, and those are going to be so let me show you real quick where I got these. One of the packs that I bought was this even though it says Unreal Engine 4 City Trash Prop Set, it comes with the FBXs. So there is some work involved to get these all to be in Cryengine, but overall it's a good pack with good quality assets. So and plus these are kind of the assets that you would need to fill up scenes. You got some trash items, you got some boxes, you got some trash bags, you got even some plywood here. So it's like I said, there's quite a bit of things in here. So let's add some of those in our scene. So let's go to brush, and we have some maybe some trash bags, right? So let's do a trash bag here. We'll just probably plop it right there. Whoops. And where did that go? Well, that is kind of annoying. Oh, I think I might have something. Do I have it not toggling to anything? Snap into geometry. Let's see if that does it. Whoa. Well, I haven't seen that happen. What's going on with this asset that I can't add it into this scene? That is kind of interesting. Let me try adding another one of my my own assets. So let's take a look at maybe another plywood piece. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess it does. Oscar mentioned that Cryengine forces you to keep everything clean, so that is correct. So let's take a look. Hopefully once I reboot the engine, this is going to be all sorted out. Alright, let's try and bring in one of those trash bags again, and hopefully we won't get any. Apparently there was something going on. Alright, so now we have a trash bag in here, and trying to place this and somewhere around here. Also, one of the things that I've noticed, and no rubbish, exactly, Oscar. Um, so one thing that I like to mention, and that I haven't done yet, but I've always wanted to try, is actually doing two perspective windows. So let's take a look and see if we can do that real quick. So let's see if we can get another perspective window open, and let's dock it on the bottom, just like so. Which it kind of tends to be a little weird because of the sizing. You can probably always, let's see if we can change the resolution to like that. Okay, that's pretty good. So with this positioned over here, you know, I can just go around and manipulate things around here. So for example, I can like move this here, and you know, this one you'll notice, you know, from our point of view how things appear. So I think that's pretty interesting to work with. Alright, so let's add maybe maybe some boxes from that same pack. So box, it's probably not boxes, it's probably just box. You know, that not a pallet box, but you know, maybe a pizza box. And right now it's not placing it right on top of that because I don't have any collisions going. So once you have collisions going, whenever you drop something in, you'll be able to, you know, place them around. So let's add another one here. It's starting to look more like maybe not so much of a funhouse, but let's turn the rotation down to 30. So let's kind of place it right there. Yeah, so it's pretty cool to see and hear what's going on. Of course, I'm just going to keep it like this, but if you have multiple monitors, you can draw one of these perspective windows onto your left and kind of build your scenes that way. Alright, so let's see. Do we want to do like one of these boxes? Maybe. Sure, why not? Alright, there we go. I guess I was working in both screens. Alright, so so we added some of these, you know, kind of trash items to the scene. Another thing that I wanted to finish off with is the, you know, like a fun house. You know, you think, especially the way I'm looking at it, there's going to be some, and you know, for this practice project, there's going to be some targets to shoot at or throw things at or maybe interact with. So that is also from QBrush. So if you look at this, you can probably you know, pause the video real quick for the link, and that is from Alexander S. These are I have to say they're some really good looking assets, so it's not that price. I think it's a lot less than that. But to me, they were really useful. So let's add some of these you know, targets in our scene. And for now, I'm just going to close out of this because it's a little it just makes the window too small. Okay, so let's look for some targets. Target. So I processed quite a few of them. So let's add them in. And they also come with a kind of a rail mechanism. So for example, if you want to get really fancy with it, let's actually do that. So I'm going to add these in using the grid because the mechanism was, you'll notice, you'll see that real quick. So we have the sliding mechanism, then I think we have the sliding bar, like right there, and then let's place in a target, and that will be it. So they're all positioned, they all have the same origin point. So, whoops. So let's select those, and I can turn off the grid snapping since I have them all in one place. If you look at it right now, what you could potentially do is you can have this one and this one grouped together, Actually, that's not going to work so well. Um, but you can probably link the two. So, you know, by using the link here. So, I believe, I haven't done this in a while, so let's take a look and see if this works. So, you can we do it like that? Oh, you'd have to look in the documentation. But once you link them, for example, you can probably select the bottom piece, and then just like it would slide along the rail. And of course, if you knock the target off, you know, you can like, bam, it just drops on the floor. You know, once you maybe you have a certain hit points that you want to get to. So once you get that, you know, all those hit points done, you know, you can um, um, you can just drop the target. But you know, in the meantime, it could be set up as, you know, just going from left to right, and you know, kind of you try to hit it. Maybe even rotate. So it's all up to you. So for now, at least for the purpose of this, I'm just going to create a group and place this somewhere like along here, let's say. And it's going to be right there. Let's move this trash bag in front of it. Alright, so there's one of the target. And the other ones are identical. They're just, you know, maybe one of them, you know, the designer of the funhouse was, whoa, my keyboard is going all, I have an issue with one of my keys, and sometimes it sticks. So let's maybe place this somewhere here. I'm just kind of hang it on the wall. You know, the other thing you can probably add, let's see, what happened to this? Did I flip it? I think I did. Alright, so you can also maybe, the other stuff that I've added, not necessary, but you can add a decal, just kind of place it somewhere around here. So, and I got some rubbish textures that you can probably you know, add to this, you know, just to add a little bit more, you know, kind of break up the floor itself a little bit. So for example, some cable trash, maybe maybe a newspaper or something. So let's see, I think I have some paper rubbish or something like that. At least I hoped. There we go, some like general trash. I think this is from, this particular one is from, it's more of an exterior type texture, not necessarily for interior. It's, I believe, from Megascans. But let's add some, like a cardboard kind of thing here. So, maybe place it right there. So that is one of the, I think the last thing that I had in the scene was a lamp. So let's take a look at that. And I think this is also from what I mentioned earlier, that game SDK. And so let's see, is it called a lamp or an industrial lamp? Broken. Let's see. Yeah, I think this is going to do just fine. Alright, so there's that. But that's broken. I don't like it. So let's take a look and see if we can change. Let's go to properties and change this mesh to be the industrial lamp itself. So there it is. That's looking much better. It also has a nice glow to it. So what we'll do to finish off the scene is actually take a look at the lighting. So, and the way I've set up lighting for the other one. So let's try and position this one light kind of right underneath here. Alright, so you can go at this a couple of ways. The way I've done it is I'm actually having this one light kind of be the ambient type light, and then I've created a separate one, so a duplicate, for the shadow casting lights. So let's go to this one and actually turn on shadows to low. So, and the other thing you can do is actually turn this one down a little even more. So so there we go. We get a little bit stronger shadows. I think that would be a good point for this. Let's see, do it again. Yeah, that's pretty good right there. So that is kind of the simple, really simple setup for lights. What you can do is the one that's casting shadow, you can bring it up a little higher, kind of up to here. I would say, you know, so you get this industrial lamp casting shadows, and but you know you also get the ambient light around it. So once that is in place, I'm guessing one of the things that you can add, since this has volumetric fog turned on, and my level is a little bit messed up, so sometimes I've had issues with the fog volume, but let's see if it works. So let's add that in here. So you'll notice there's a tiny amount of fog there. So let's go to properties and set the size of it to be a little bigger. So size, let's set this to 3 by 3 by 10 maybe. So there you go. You have a little bit of, you have this, and let's bring it down. So you got this fog kind of thing around where the light is. I'm just going to bring this sheetrock, or this, see, I'm calling it sheetrock, so the drywall. And what do you want to do here? Why is it? I'm going to save it because I haven't done anything that might have caused issues. So hopefully it's not gonna break anything once I load the level. So this is the issue that I was talking about earlier with my level in particular, where the fog volume is acting up pretty crazy. Let's see. I think we've already had that saved. So let's move this. By the way, I'm just pressing 1 to move, 2 to rotate, and 3 to scale for this. Okay, so let's try adding that fog volume because I really like the look of it. Hopefully it works. At least to kind of complete the scene. I'm not entirely sure, like I said, what's going on with this particular level of mine, but I've done some pretty weird things in it, and I'm assuming something might have broken the fog volume component. So let's try and add this again right there, and again, just like before, set the properties to, let's do it 2 by 2 by 5. So there we go. It's kind of a little bit more in that area there, and we can also, we can bring the global density to 4 just to highlight that a little more. All right. So that is pretty much everything that I wanted to show for today. Hopefully it was helpful to some folks, and thank you all for stopping by. So hopefully next time we'll get a little bit more back into some of the programming aspects for this little project of mine, and until then, you guys have a great day. Alright, thanks again for stopping by.